Nobody is absolutely ethical, so why do they keep pretending to be? Somehow every company, influencer, politician, even your neighbor Gary, seems to act as though they've cracked the code. Ethics has become a marketing strategy, and that's ruined it. Because when we try to be seen as absolutely ethical, we start putting on a show instead of doing the work. Here's what happens. We turn ethics into a binary. You're either good or bad, ethical or unethical. But that binary creates pressure to prove that we're on the good side. So instead of actually working on ourselves, we focus on looking the part. We judge others to make ourselves feel better. We burn out from the constant moral purity testing. And we miss the real question. Who am I becoming through my actions? What if I told you there's a completely different way to think about this? What if the goal isn't to be ethical, but to practice ethics? Think of it like this. In Japanese archery, or Kyudo, there's a difference between hitting the target and true hitting. We can hit by luck while still having poor form, but it feels hollow. True hitting comes from the countless hours refining our form so that where the arrow lands is just a natural consequence of who we've become as an archer. Ethics works the same way. We can stumble into good outcomes while being disconnected from our deeper values. Or we can build a practice where our actions flow from genuine alignment. Guess which one feels better? The goal isn't just good outcomes, but it's good outcomes that flow from who we genuinely are. Now you might be wondering about the name Almost Ethical and why just being ethical isn't a very good standard to live by. The thinking is that we're never able to have 100% of the information in any given situation. And so therefore, we can't ever hope to make a 100% ethical decision either. In other words, without absolute information, we can't be absolutely ethical, which is typically how the term ethical is misrepresented as a binary. Holding this in mind, we then have to start to use our critical thinking and make decisions that require considerable amounts of thought, reflection, and deep understanding of consequences from the information we have access to. Although there is a caveat to be discussed with respect to survival and non-survival situations. But as time goes on and we're introduced to more and more information, proportionally, we should be looking to make more and more ethical decisions too. So, how do we shift from simply performing ethics to genuinely practicing it? It's a journey, not a destination, but here are some guideposts. Number 1, notice the performance. Pay attention to when you're acting good to look good versus acting from genuine care. Number 2, ask different questions. Instead of, am I being ethical? Ask, what's the most loving choice here? Number 3, embrace the practice. Treat each moment as an opportunity to align your actions with your values, not as a test to pass. And number 4, return, don't retreat. When you mess up, and you will, use it as data for refinement, not an excuse to give up. I can hear you saying, why should we care about practicing ethics instead of projecting perfect ethical status? Why does that actually matter? Here's where it gets interesting. We're told that being ethical means putting others before ourselves, that self-interest and ethics are opposites. For millennia, religions gave us some beautiful ideals. Be selfless, turn the other cheek, treat others with kindness and compassion. But when those frameworks lose their hold, many people believe that morality becomes meaningless. Without divine reward or cosmic justice, why bother being good? Those religious ideals weren't wrong. They just needed better grounding. Taking care of others is actually in our self-interest, because it's how we function best as human beings. The problem is with what I call shallow self-interest. Quick validation, immediate comfort, looking good to others. That stuff burns out fast, and it usually leaves a hole. What I call deep self-interest, though, asks different questions. Who do I want to become? What actions leave me feeling more whole over time? And the actions that make us feel most aligned usually consider others too. Because we don't actually live in isolation. And if we create a better world, we also get to live in it. Self-interest becomes the bridge that grounds those beautiful ideas in lived reality. And honestly, we need this more than ever. It's becoming more and more common to hear how many people are feeling completely lost, like they have no purpose or direction whatsoever. Social media fragmenting our attention, economic and political instability making traditional paths feel unreliable, The institutions we used to trust for guidance feel increasingly hollow. When the old ways of finding meaning break down, people are left scrambling. Some retreat into nihilism, others desperately cling to rigid ideologies or blinding themselves with indulgence. If you don't know how to reconcile what you want to do and what you should do, if you feel stuck because you can't decide between them, but also don't yet have a good enough gauge to know what you truly want, then I would highly suggest approaching the situation with curiosity and humility. Most of us lack the understanding of what right even means. We bounce around between potential goals, futures, and identities in pursuit of this idea of right. Intentionally using imperfect frameworks to better deal with these situations, as compared to simply agreeing to the seemingly infallible answers that are pushed onto us, will help us to feel that we are at least in the driver's seat of our own life. So, what could pursuing deep self-interest actually give us? Peace. And not in the casual way that people tend to throw the word around, but actually standing behind it. Peace as a fundamental principle that combines caring for ourselves and caring for others. We hear people talk about peace all the time, but then they turn around and support systems that cause so much unnecessary suffering and violence. They say they value peace while eating exploited animals that have been needlessly killed. They claim to want peace while ignoring their own self-destruction. Again, this isn't to say that we can be perfectly pure and not cause any suffering at all. We always will. But valuing peace means taking it seriously in how we treat ourselves, how we treat others, and in how we move through the world. It's the highest goal underlying everything I'm talking about here. So, what gives us real peace? That brings me to what I'm actually trying to do with this project. I focus on two things: the theory and practice of moral cultivation. Theory is the intangible work. This is exploring frameworks, developing ideas, and wrestling with meaning. In other words, the philosophy of moral cultivation and how we grow from it. Practice is the tangible work. This is where theory becomes action, where I test if ideas can stand in the world. I show this with Kudo as embodied reflection and advocacy as lived accountability. Really though, it's about figuring out how to live, and moral cultivation is just the best method I've found for that. What I'm trying to do here with Almost Ethical is to show that the practice of making progress is the point. It may be flawed, and I will certainly make mistakes, but it's my sincere attempt at approaching my best approximation of truth. If any of this resonates with you, which I hope it does, I'll be exploring these ideas more in upcoming videos. What this actually looks like in day-to-day life, building sustainable practices that can be supported by this way of thinking, and why love might be the highest form of self-interest. But for now, stop trying to be perfectly ethical or brushing it all off as irrelevant. Start practicing sincerity. Be honest with yourself about who you really are and what you're capable of. Peace.